Madera friends, welcome back to another podcast, another episode of Touch Base, and we're going to jump into our third characteristic or third trait of the emotional intelligence spectrum that we've been kind of talking about, and that is the conversation of motivation. And as we usually do, I'm just going to kind of start you with a story that kind of gives us a little bit of a feel here. Some of you maybe have heard of the Camino de Santiago trail in Spain. It is this, if you do the whole thing, it is this 500-mile trek across northern Spain. And a few years ago, two very good friends, Justin Skisuk is the first guy, and Patrick Gray is his best friend, went on this journey. But what makes this journey so unique and so incredible is that Justin Skisuk was in a wheelchair. When Skisuk was 16 years old, he was in a car accident, and it triggered this weird and very unique progressive autoimmune disorder, and it ended up paralyzing him in his arms and his hands and his legs. And at 38 years of age, sitting in his suburban home in Boise, Idaho, he was just watching TV, and he was trying to figure out how to go about life with this disability and this major tragedy in his background. And he caught a TV show that was kind of talking about El Camino, this journey across Spain. And he said he just thought it was an amazing event opportunity. And he just kind of thought to himself, he was like, I wonder if I could do that. Like, even in a wheelchair, I wonder if I could pull that off. And so he talked to his wife about it. And she said, and she kind of gave him some advice. She was like, that'd be a really cool thing for you to do with Patrick, because she didn't really want to go on the trek with him, but she thought maybe Patrick, his best friend, would want to. And Patrick Gray's response was like, absolutely, I'll push you. We'll do it. Let's do it together. And so they kind of went on this journey. The interesting thing about it is just how difficult the journey was. The start date was June 3rd of the year that they went. They'd packed their bags. They said goodbye to their kids and their families, their wives, and they just went on this crazy 35-day journey. It was mind-bogglingly difficult to ascend this mountain, to take it up. The very first day, Patrick tells a story that the very first day was the craziest thing just to kind of go through it, just simply because he never thought it would be that hard. And so along the way, multiple things went wrong. At one point, the wheelchair broke, and they had to rely upon different people to help them. At other points, it rained and it was muddy, and I can't imagine trying to push a wheelchair with my best friend up a muddy or even down a muddy mountain, and all the different things that kind of go for that. They spent roughly 6 weeks on this journey. At different points, they were going through shin-high rivers, up and down these crazy slopes. At one point, the journey was so difficult and so treacherous that Patrick had to get Justin out of the wheelchair, carry him up the mountain into a safe spot, go back down the mountain, pick up the wheelchair, carry the wheelchair up the mountain, put Justin back in it in order for them to keep going. Patrick makes a statement. He says, "We knew there was no way that Justin and I were going to accomplish this on our own. We were going to have faith that people who were also making this trek would show up and help us at the right times." And he said, and they did. He noted that at one point in their journey, there were 17 different people helping them, representing 10 different countries. And finally, after 35 days, they completed their journey on July 7th. Their wives were waiting for them, and they got a chance to celebrate this great journey. But I think the biggest thing as we have this conversation is, what pushes a man like Justin Skisuk to believe that he and his buddy Patrick Gray could hike 500 miles? Like, what motivates a man who is paralyzed from his arms and his hands and his legs to look at this type of a trek and go, I want to do that. I need to do that. There's something in me that's driven for it. Or even for Patrick, who looks at his friend and doesn't say, dude, you're in a wheelchair. Like, there's no way we can pull this off. He's just motivated to jump up and to help his friend. This is our topic for conversation today, motivation. From self-motivation to motivating others, what are those inspiring forces that drive us forward and send us out? And I want to make certain that you understand, like, We can't even have the conversation without remembering where we've been in this conversation of EQ, this emotional intelligence. We need to remember what self-awareness is. Like, we understand who we are. We understand ourselves, our values, our feelings, the environment around us, and how we impact others. We understand how others see us in all of those things, right? How they see our values and how they see us in our feelings and the environmental impact that we have upon others. And then there's also that second one that we talked about, self-regulation. How do we manage our emotions? How do we direct those impulses? And what are these efforts? What are our efforts towards healthy long-term goals and relationships, if we have any? Hopefully we do. And then we, as in the midst of self-regulation, we want to grow in our ability to communicate. We want to persevere in difficult times. We want to stay flexible. And part of this is we want to see the good in others, right? With that as our foundation, we can have a conversation about true motivation and what it is, at least what it is in its healthiest form. Daniel Goleman, who I've mentioned before, is kind of the godfather, if you will, when it comes to emotional intelligence. And he talks about 4 components of self-motivation. He talks about 1, achievement drive. It is that personal drive internally to accomplish, to improve, and to meet certain standards, either that you set for yourself or people who are over you or people who inspire you set for you. Number 2 is commitment, to your own goals and to the goals of others that I'm driven for these types of things. Number 3 is initiative, the readiness to act upon opportunities that when I see something in front of me that I either want to accomplish, can accomplish, or do better in, like I'm going to grab hold of the moment. My son, thanks to the Super Bowl, has recently encountered Eminem. And he cannot stop singing One Shot, right? So that's that thing, right? You see this moment, I'm going to grab it, I'm going to take this opportunity and run. The last one, and the fourth one here, is the conversation of resiliency. It is that tendency within ourselves to optimistically look ahead, to persevere with this belief that I can do this. Like, the drive is in me. I've got the commitment. I've got the initiative, the opportunity, and I'm just going to bear down and do it. That grittiness that we have within us to just push forward. These are all clearly connected to our conversation of self-awareness and self-regulation. People want to be motivated. People are created, I think. I mean, we have this internal inherent drive that we want to be motivated by certain things, that motivation matters when it comes to the way that we live. And there's 2 types of motivations that kind of work for us and work in tandem. The first of which is intrinsic motivation. It's that internal push to perform a task simply because you enjoy the task or because you love the rewards that come by participating in the task. It is recognizing and appreciating these built-in rewards that kind of come along the way where you enjoy the process. That's internal, intrinsic motivation. The other side is extrinsic motivation, that you perform a task because of an outside pressure or an outside motivation. This kind of looks like in the job market and places like that. External rewards are like money or influence, status, recognition, or maybe even punishment. And so these 2 things kind of come along and work together, and both motivations can be beneficial, especially in the workplace. But we have to practice extrinsic motivation wisely, right? There's good and bad to extrinsic motivation. The good is that it's much easier to implement, and you can conveniently push people into new habits and behaviors just simply because you're saying do this, or it's good because you can integrate them into processes and programs for larger audiences. Many of you understand the merit-based increases that we've been talking about with the annual performance reviews. This is a good, hopefully, extrinsic motivator for you to jump into your jobs with everything that you've got. That we want to give you raises, but we want you to earn those things. The bad thing is a lot of times with extrinsic motivators is that they're kind of fleeting. They tend to fade in the long term, and they can actually hinder intrinsic motivation. For instance, if you're doing something that you hate simply because of the extrinsic motivator, eventually you're going to lose all the joy in the process. And that's not the type of like healthy lifestyle that we want to live, that we even want for you as you do your jobs with the Madera companies. Intrinsic motivation is absolutely necessary for us to live our most emotionally intelligent life, but it is often very difficult. But what makes it beautiful is that it's born from your values. It's born from your identity. It's something that kind of pushes you from within, that allows you to, like I said earlier, to love the process as much as you love the achievement. It allows you to love the people you're in the process with as much as you love the achievement. It's beautiful because it helps you love the journey. And in loving the journey, grit becomes natural. Curiosity and creativity bloom because you're enjoying the process. What could we do? Not what do I have to do? Recognition is appreciated, which we all want and appreciate and love, and yet it's not essential just because I love what I do. So if you see it, great. If you compliment me on how well I'm doing, fantastic. I appreciate that, but I love what I do, so I'm going to keep doing it, right? And then teamwork becomes a value because I want to enjoy the journey with the people that I'm around. And these are the types of properties. These are the types of branches. These are the types of departments that we want to have. What makes it difficult, though, is like I said a second ago, it's tied to our identity, which means it can't be cultivated. You can't cultivate intrinsic motivation without cultivating self-awareness and emotional maturity. So with all that said, come back to our first story for just a moment. While most of us will never hike northern Spain, especially the 500 miles it takes to get across the El Camino de Santiago, what motivates people to achieve something like that? Sitting within the Madera values is this idea as people. Something within us wants to belong to something bigger than ourselves and wants to do great things. And I encourage you to search for that, tap into that, journey in self-awareness and self-regulation to figure out what are those motivations and understand it is that journey. The same thing is that inside those same values that we hold here at Madera is the idea that great things are accomplished when we work with others, when we have a shared mission. And that's when we get to do great things because we're doing it in community. You've heard that. Especially even going all the way back to our first interview with John McNelly. As we wrap up, this means that we've got to understand what is it that's motivating us to do what we're doing, both personally and professionally, and then discipline ourselves to kind of follow through on the process as much as the desire for the achievement that comes at the end of the process. So as we transition into our interview, I am more than excited to bring on Natalia Munoz-Moore, who's going to be joining us for part 2 of this conversation on motivation. Natalia is the Chief Experience Officer of Viva First, and I'm certain she is going to be a great interview with great insights, and so I hope you'll join us for that one. For now, have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.